Welcome back, everybody. Our last session today is the Construction Leadership Panel with senior leaders from PCL, Wright Construction, and Humboldt Electric. The president of Humboldt Electric, Ashley McConnel, I hope I said that right, Ashley, has an employee-first approach to business as the foundation of her leadership philosophy and style. She understands the importance and value of open and honest communication between team members, as well as with partners, suppliers, and clients. As an advocate for local business, she brings a fresh perspective to the commitment to the community as a director of the NSBA. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to squeeze some more people in here. We got Clay Newby, is an operations manager at PCL Construction in Saskatchewan. Oh, there he is. He's had leadership roles on several high-profile, large-scale, and complex projects, ranging from industrial expansions, civil infrastructure, to major building projects, the most noticeable being the Children's Hospital of Saskatchewan. Clay provides technical and administrative expertise and support to project teams, ensuring that each project has the people and resources it needs to be successful. Welcome, Clay.
Good morning.
And last but not least, from Wright Construction, Leslie Doka began as a project coordinator and has been the director of construction since 2004. She quickly rose to manage some of the company's largest projects, becoming an integral part of its operations. Her expertise earned recognition beyond Wright's borders, joining the Governance and Nomination Committee of the Canadian Construction Association, the CCA, and in 2019, the CCA Board of Directors. Leslie continues to drive change in these roles, helping to shape the future of the construction industry. Welcome, Leslie.
Morning. All right. Now we put all these people in the same room. We need somebody to moderate them. So we are going to give you our very own Edward Pyle, Vice President of the SCSA. He is a versatile leader with a unique blend of expertise in construction safety, management consulting, and nonprofit management. He's also certified in change management practitioner, business analyst, and pursuing the Certified Association Executive designation, demonstrating his commitment to continuous learning. Dedicated to promoting initiatives that foster health, wellness, and community, he serves on the board of directors for Run Regina and is a coach for young athletes. Over to you, Ed.
Great. Thanks, Jean, for the introduction. I'm glad to be here. It's a wonderful day for a conference, and I'm glad you could all join us. We have an exciting lineup here of panelists, and I'm looking forward to an enlightening discussion. Just a reminder to everybody here in the audience, we pride ourselves here at the SCSA on two-way conversations. So if you have a question that I haven't asked, please feel free to put it in the chat and I'll try to give it to the presenters. So with that, I will start off with a bit of an icebreaker question here for everyone on the panel. And the question is, given your background and experience, what led you to this point in your career? How did you start your journey in business, leadership, and safety? And do you have a particular story or event that brought you here? And we'll start with Ashley.
Okay. Well, I think just a little bit about me. I've kind of come through maybe more the business side of Humboldt Electric and the construction industry. So after I graduated from university, I started in a human resource role with Humboldt Electric. And then over the last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to kind of work through different business areas of Humboldt Electric. So administration, accounting, procurement, safety, as well as project admin and coordinating. And that, I think, just that experience in itself has led me to where I am today. So today I do oversee the business side of our operations. I think, kind of in line with leadership, the one thing I really reflect on and I'm very grateful for is the opportunity to have the experience in different facets of our business. It allows me to understand and appreciate the roles of all of our team members, but also accept and support them through the challenges. And I think a lot of times if there's a disconnect between yourself and the people you're leading, you're not able to fully understand what they're going through. So I don't know if that's a fun story for you or not, but I think that's the one thing I'm very grateful for. And I think that's something that's very key to where I am today. And hopefully our team sees it the same way.
Great. Clay, I'll ask you the same question.
So background. So it's interesting. I recently had the opportunity to speak in front of engineers at the University of Saskatchewan, and I gave them my whole experience from when I was a wee child to today. But I won't get into that level of detail. But to be honest, I think part of me always wanted to be an engineer in civil engineering and design bridges and structures. I graduated civil engineering in 2003. Proceeded to get a job in consulting and hated 2 years of my life while I was doing it. So I was quickly realized that I needed something more than sitting behind a computer. And, fortunately I made the decision to enter into the construction industry, and it's a decision I certainly haven't regretted since I've done that. It's just a really dynamic and people relationship driven business that I've really enjoyed and have been pretty fortunate to be part of. I started, I guess, within general contracting back in 2005, on an industrial site. So I've spent some time within the industrial world, building and understanding their safety program and policies. Transitioned from that into buildings as a coordinator, where I had the opportunity to work on some really cool buildings, as well as some civil and infrastructure work. And then I've recently transitioned, I guess, over the last, 5 or 6 years of my career into more of a leadership position within the business, supporting our operations groups, as well as just making sure that everyone has the resources available to them to do what they need to do on our project sites. From my experience, I've been boots on the ground to, sitting in trailers and on job sites for the majority of my career, and having that connection to the field and what we do as an industry and how we can influence that's been a big part of, what I've seen. I guess, from experience's standpoint, unfortunately I have been, witness to when safety things go bad, as well as I've fortunate to see where it goes right, and how the policies and procedures that we put in place can have a positive impact on our workforce and people going home. So I've seen a lot in my 20 plus years, and looking forward to the rest of it too. So
Okay, Leslie, same question over to you.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I started my education background was an architectural diploma at Sask Poly, and then went on to study finance at the U of S in the Edwards College of Business. I spent, like Clay, I started out my career in engineer drafting and design. I spent the first 5 of my years of my career in structural drafting and design. And but the favorite part of my job was getting to put my boots on and go out site. And through that role, my main site activity was rebar inspections, concrete testing, steel inspections, deck inspections. But as I went and did these inspections, I was very interested in construction and thought, this is where my interest is at. In 2004, I joined Wright Construction, so 20 years ago, and got to spend much more time on site, obviously. I started at the very bottom and worked my way through project coordinator roles and site coordinator roles into project manager roles, and have worked on various sizes of commercial projects throughout Western Canada. My current title is Director of Construction, and I spend most of my time in leadership strategy initiatives, oversight of projects, and working with our teams on legal insurance.
All right, very good. So one of the most important factors of whether a company succeeds or not is a culture, a strong, effective culture, and a culture where people feel safe and empowered to raise concerns across the business, whether safety, financial, or other potential risks. Starting with you, Leslie, would you describe your leadership style and how you ensure a healthy and sustainable business?
Ashley or Leslie?
I hope that's you. You call me?
Yeah.
We're all just shocked. Like, who's supposed to be speaking? Okay, yes. How do we establish a culture of open dialogue? I think for us, and I think it's a huge shift in the world period, is we really focus on a collaborative team-based approach to everything we do in our business. So I think getting employees involved and making them feel part of the process helps open up that dialogue. Three kind of pillars, I guess, I look at in our business that I think are fundamental to open dialogue and employees feeling safe and in their environment to bring up concerns is communication. And it kind of probably sounds silly when we're talking about open dialogue, but communication in the aspect of two-way communication, where employees feel that they're part of, decision making, and they're part of understanding change, and there's the strong communication going down to them. And I think that's where you get the reciprocation, and the communication comes from them. When an employee feels part of a decision, or when they're asked for their opinion, they vocalize what they feel. So whether they have a question, whether they have a concern, whether they have risks that come to mind, or maybe they just simply want to challenge the solution you're putting forward, you're opening that environment up to them. However, I think to really achieve open dialogue, you need two more pillars. And the first one is trust. So your team needs to feel that they have a trusting, safe environment with their coworkers, and that they can raise concerns, particularly when it comes to safety. I think raising safety concerns has a stigma of being kind of frowned down upon, or that you're calling people out. And I think, at the end of the day, everyone's just there to protect each other. So when you create an environment of trust, you see a lot more employees being vocal, but also transparency. And I think that's something where leadership really comes into play, is understanding transparency and how to be transparent with your employees, but also where kind of that line in the sand is, where you need to, I kind of call it like respective transparency, where you're considering their roles and what's privy to them, and making sure they feel that there's transparent communication, but that you're not crossing a line and it's becoming counterproductive. So I think, I guess, to summarize, yes, for us, our three elements of our culture that promote open dialogue would be two-way communication and continual communication, building trust and continuing that trust, as well as transparency.
Excellent. Now, Leslie, would you like to add to that?
I echo Ashley's comments. I mean, a lot of the points that I have were around open communication and collaboration, I think, at every level within the company. I would add positive attitudes towards continuous learning. I think that, encouraging engagement, I don't want to repeat what Ashley said, but I mean, I personally like to lead by example. I mean, there's never a silly question. I ask my own questions. Construction is the business of continuous learning. So we have to model that, even as leaders in our business. I'm not as specifically related to safety, but I think that one of the things that we try and do, more related to production issues, is always use mistakes as lessons learned. Lessons learned are a large part of our culture at Wright, and these come from all aspects of the business, and are shared and distributed throughout the company as appropriate. There's always something positive to be gained and learned through mistakes. We're not punishing people for mistakes, but we need to share them and learn off them. I mean, it's a little different in safety, but I think a culture of open communication applies to having high safety standards as well.
Good, excellent. And Clay, would you like to add to that?
I'll take it. Again, not to say all the same things that Leslie and Ashley just said, because to be honest, communication is key. But maybe it's just something that, some initiatives that PCL approaches in regards to our leadership style and how, we can help influence that culture. We've just recently gone through a really interesting exercise as to developing our strategic safety plan for the business here in Saskatoon. And a lot of that is driven through the senior leadership. And we've got some very talented, smart people that have, the ability to dissect the numbers and see where our trends are and understand where there's areas that we need to be focusing on. But to that point is that, we work to get a good diverse group around a table to talk about what is important to the district and our business at hand, and then how we can influence that to create a safe culture of work. So, bringing the right people around the table to have that conversation, understand where our areas of improvements can be, where our areas of support can be, and where that attention needs to be paid. And then understanding is then how we communicate that to the business. We're a large organization. We have a lot of sites that are going on, and safety is absolutely driven from the top down. And if, we're not supporting the message and the expectation for our superintendents and our leaders on our sites and projects to also communicate and distribute, and if we're not giving them the tools to be able to share that information, it's not getting down to the people that are actually swinging the hammers and doing the work. So, part of that plan is how we share that information and then communicate that down so that it can be shared broadly across all of our trade partners as well as our workers. So, we make a very intentional effort to make sure that the right people get the message and how then they share that. And then, it's about senior leadership getting to sites to, see firsthand that message and those actions are bearing fruit and are actually taking hold. So,
yeah, that's how has that approach to diversity and inclusion in your company had an impact on your day-to-day business or your bottom line?
Day to day, to be honest, it's getting a good perspective as to how we're doing our business, and how that impacts the individual groups. Construction is not the most diverse business to begin with. Fortunately, we have two amazing female leaders in our industry on this call, so I'd like to, defer a little bit to them. But, it's bringing, the different perspectives around the table just to see how, to be honest, how people share and communicate information, as well as how different people receive that information, not only across, say, the more typical diverse, I guess, buckets, but also, vertically, how a laborer on a construction site versus how a superintendent receives information and processes that information is very different. So getting those different people around a table to understand what is important to them and how they want to hear that message is key.
Okay. Ashley, is there anything you'd like to add there in terms of diversity and inclusion and the effect on a company or the effect on the bottom line?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing I see is to me and to Humboldt Electric, diversity is success. And it's getting similar to kind of what Clay said, different minded people around an initiative, around a table, that the diversity breaks down different barriers at different stages, and it allows, I feel like, the best solution to come forward. So, diversity brings different experience. It brings different culture and cultural awareness to the table. A huge one, like Clay mentioned, the communication, and it quickly points out communication barriers you might be seeing in your company. And if you don't have that diverse representation, especially a significant diverse representation, you won't notice that. And you'll wonder why there's failures down the line, like Clay mentioned, from senior level to the field staff. But you're lacking to understand the implement that diversity has. And, it kind of too comes into, I think, I'm proud to say that the Saskatchewan construction industry is doing a significant push on not only women in the construction industry, but diversifying many different areas of minority inclusion. And I think it's just, you're going to see a huge growth of our industry from that diversity that's coming forward. And I just hope that all the leaders out there continue to make sure that, recruitment and retention strategies are focused around diversity and inclusion, because you can have all the best intentions in the world to help be part of the movement of diversity. But if you don't have recruitment and retention strategies and inclusivity policies that support that, you won't see the success from it. So,
Leslie, anything further on that?
I think that, it relates to a lot of the topics we're going to cover today. I think Ashley and Clay have touched on the same points I will. I think it does. It will be a theme today in our discussion, I'm guessing. So, Yeah, nothing right now.
Okay, so I'll throw this question out to anyone on the panel then. Clay had mentioned construction's not always the most diverse industry. How do we be intentional about attracting diversity and attracting those diverse diverse people? Anyone want to take that one?
I mean, I can start it off. To me, there's a couple different facets that come to mind. I think there's very on a small scale, a company's initiative. And I think I started to touch on that, but companies have to deliberately work to put diversity and inclusion recruitment policies in place to help analyze, number one, maybe gaps. If we recognize that we haven't been the most diverse industry, what are the gaps and barriers to increasing that diversity, and how do we overcome them? And I think the one thing I'm very thankful for in the Saskatchewan industry, as well as Saskatchewan construction industry throughout the province, is we have such a great group of people that always come together. So I think there's a way that companies can come together and work through some of the barriers that we're seeing that's, has created I think it starts with stereotypes, really. I think it starts with companies coming together and associations coming together to promote the construction industry and work through those barriers. And then it's just deliberate recruitment strategies of making sure that you have employment policies in place that help support women in construction, minority groups, internationals in construction. And in Saskatchewan, that might also come into play with the Saskatchewan Apprenticeship Board and what the challenges might be there in having someone that comes from international to Canada in a skilled trade, and what the barriers are, or what the education the companies need to be hiring to meet apprenticeship requirements. But I think it takes an army, really, and I don't think there's one company that's going to make a change. I think it's local companies coming together. I think this associations have already shown their support of trying to put on events and educational seminars about diversity. And we just not too long ago had a women in construction event that was well received, and it's great to see that every year that event keeps growing. And I think we're doing something right. It's just you don't see it overnight, really.
Great. Does anybody else want to comment there?
I again echo what Ashley was saying, is that the PCL has a very intentional hiring policy and recruiting policy around a diverse workforce, and that is from our operations stream to our field stream, as well as our workforce on site. The big thing, and to echo Ashley's comment, is that as an organization supporting the associations and the respective groups in our community that are getting behind really showing that construction is an option for those, like for women or for internationals, how we recruit people within our organization, and what that looks like to bring an international employee into an organization, or an Indigenous employee into an organization, and to the communication as to how they communicate and how they understand what we do, and how we can then, train, develop, and grow those people within our organization, as well as supporting the community broader, so that they understand that this is an industry and a career that they can get behind and participate in, so that we can get as much engagement as we can through those groups.
Clay, as someone who works for a company with an excellent safety record, do you use that as a strategic advantage when you're recruiting that workforce? Yes. Short answer, yes. We're pretty proud of what we do as an organization and what our safety record looks like. That's absolutely part of that conversation. And through that recruitment, also identifying like-minded individuals that believe in our culture and our values, which tie very much to our safety culture and policy. That's a big piece that we look at within our recruitment to see if they're going to fit in, and if they are within their own values, in alignment with what we're trying to do as a business here at PCL. Great. Would anyone else like to comment on that? On safety as a strategic advantage in recruiting?
Yeah, I think that, I guess, just at a more macro level, I mean, I think construction has an image problem. And, you know, I would say as an industry, we might question whether we're great at marketing our industry for all the advantages that it has and all the really cool things that we do to contribute to society. You know, we do have and will continue to have a labor shortage. But I think that you know, I think a lot of business owners and leadership are humble people, and don't like to you know, brag per se about all the cool things they do and have built and the way they contribute to society. But I think we need to be more vocal about our accomplishments, and learn how to market ourselves. There's a great way to earn a living in this business in a very rewarding career. You know, I think youth, even in talking to youth over the last 20 years, you know, they don't have an understanding of what the roles actually are within construction. It's just a surface view that's not always that positive. So I think we can do a lot better there, and that in itself will attract a more diverse and dynamic workforce.
Okay, we've seen a question from the audience now. How do you deal with putting across those safety policies and that culture of safety when you've got a diverse workforce and sometimes English skills aren't totally present?
I'll maybe go. What we've done as an organization here at PCL is that, well, I mean, it's a little bit twofold. We've identified the time required for orientations on site can be a challenge just from a productivity standpoint, as well as just people being ready to work. So we've actually moved a portion of, or say maybe more broad general orientations online. So, you know, before people actually even step foot on our site is that they are, you know, expected to take our online orientation. That online orientation is actually offered in multiple languages. So, you know, providing that opportunity for, you know, people with that challenge to receive that online orientation. Then from a site level, you kind of just have to be creative to the point that, you know, there was, you know, when there was the large recruitment of Ukrainian employees, which, you know, is still happening, finding someone within the business that can, you know, speak the language of the people that you're trying to orientate, bringing them in as part of that process, helping, you know, work the dialogue back and forth. You have to find, you know, creative ways to solve problems to, you know, to remove those barriers.
I think that's maybe one thing. Oh, sorry. I think that's one thing just about recruitment and the considerations that employers have to make as we start to try to expand diversity. And I think it's twofold. I mean, we recognize there is a labor shortage and that we are going to have to broaden our recruitment efforts. And I think, you know, there's recruitment efforts and policies and strategies about diversity, but then there's also that retention side of things. And I think, you know, that's something that employers have to start to look through, is those challenges, because, you know, safety orientation is really just your first hurdle in a language barrier. Now they get to site and they're maybe not surrounded by people that they can communicate effectively with. And that's a major safety concern. So, you know, there's a lot of offerings in, you know, Saskatchewan in particular that I'm aware of, and at Regina as well, where it's nonprofit organizations that help to provide English training and help to provide, you know, really any training that an employee will need so they're ready for Canadian workforce. And I think that's something that we have to also get behind, not just, you know, increasing diversity in construction, but doing our part as employers to make sure that we have procedures and we have processes in place to give the tools to these individuals to be successful, because we can't hire, you know, individuals that don't speak English as a first language and wonder why in 3 months there was a safety issue, likely because they don't understand the communication around them. So hurdle number one would be language, and what can we do about that? And then there's, you know, it goes so much broader to cultural awareness and how employees are treating each other. And I think that's a trainable area where you need employees to understand how to be culturally accepting, because you can put all the processes in place to have a diverse workforce, but if employees come to work for you and don't feel accepted and safe and that they can communicate with team members, you're just, you're actually going backwards, really. So I think there's, ways that we can reach out and find other options, but I think a start is ensuring that English is there for construction in a safety sensitive position, and as an employer supporting those new hires through that process.
Leslie, anything to add?
I think I echo the comments. I mean, it is challenging, but I mean, we're problem solvers for a living. I think there is solutions here. I mean, some of the solutions I've seen are, agree with the language. I think there's also cultural, challenge as well, and some of the communication patterns. But some of the success stories I've seen of local companies are, going into a new community, a new Canadian community, and them working as a team or a group. And if they have a leader that is very adept to maybe translating or cultural nuances, there can be a lot of success in good and thorough communication that builds upon itself to generate a productive and safe work group. I mean, we are seeing that in the roofing industries. We have some roofers that are doing excellent jobs of this. We also see it in some of the steel industries. We have smaller pockets of that in our company, but I wouldn't say are leading the way like some of the other scopes are.
Okay. And as leaders, what are some of the ways we can raise cultural awareness and acceptance among workers in management? I'll throw that out to the panel.
Okay, I can start. I think one thing as a company we've kind of analyzed is that it's definitely a top-down training and environment and cultural piece, I guess you could say. So, we've looked into a lot of different organizations in Saskatchewan that do that type of training. And I think you would start at your senior and management and your supervisors and then keep going through to your employees. And one, it starts with just kindness, really, like creating a culture of acceptance and positivity. Like Leslie said, positive attitude, kindness, a passion for what they do. Right there, I think when you have a good group of people, you have a great foundation for cultural awareness and acceptance, because kind people just want to be kind. And I think if you make sure that your culture supports that, it's a good start. But like I said, I know there is some organizations out there that do like diversity, equality, inclusivity training, and some are nonprofit that do it at a very reasonable price. And it's just, I think it's one, just opening your team's mindset so they understand that they need to, sometimes just take a step back and analyze the cultural differences and how to react to those situations. I think, probably as an industry, though, we're all learning at the same time, because it's something that's becoming very relevant right now. And maybe it's something that we can start sharing information on and being leaders together in that area.
Great. Clay, you looked like you had something to say when I initially asked the question.
Well, I was going to let Leslie go first because she was just you could start it, Leslie, next time, and then you don't.
No, go ahead, Clay.
Yeah. So cultural inclusion is huge. I think the biggest thing is participate and educate. We, as an organization, have cultural inclusivity training. We have a very deep library available to all of our employees to I guess self-educate and expose themselves to that. We also do a lot of very intentional training. A lot of it used to be more reactionary based on project expectation and project requirements, but it's about taking that initiative as a company. We've recently done Indigenous awareness training for our operations and field staff. That was completely voluntary. It was open to everybody who wanted to participate because, to be honest, it's the right thing to do. we engage the local, community on their events where we can participate and help, play a role within what they're doing and how we can support that. To Ashley's point is that, we had some actually also, draw on the, diversity within your employee base right now. We had some Indigenous, we have one of our safety officers is an Indigenous, as well as some other employees with our organization, and their families participate in powwows and round dances. And, as part of the Indigenous Awareness Initiative that we had here, we engaged them to come and give our employees as well as extended family the opportunity to come and participate that in our parking lot. It was just an amazing day and experience. And I think the biggest thing is that, put yourself out there, participate, understand, educate yourself, and encourage everyone within your business to do the same.
Okay, and Leslie, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with everything that they're saying. I mean, this is, I think, a large challenge that we haven't figured out. I think that, both Ashley and Clay have put a ton of great things that are on the table, tools on the table that are making headway. But I think that we would all acknowledge there's a long way to go. So I have faith in our industry that we can figure those things out. We're problem solvers for a living. But, I think that considering, things like flexible work days, accommodating families in different ways, which is not always easy depending on the job site situation or the position that person holds, accommodating and understanding religious requirements and making it comfortable for them to incorporate that into their work day as part of their life. Dietary restrictions. I mean, we've drastically changed our policies and approach to dietary things just on company barbecues and, client appreciation and team building events on specific sites. So, I think the willingness is there. I think that we'll gather momentum as we go, but I think we do have a long way to go, unfortunately. So, but the more heads we put to it, I'm hoping that we can gain momentum.
Okay, Leslie, what benefits have you seen from making those investments in some of those flexible work policies, some of those dietary policies, those things that are more inclusive?
Yeah, I think that there's lots of examples of that. I think I personally am an example of that. I mean, both my husband and I have careers, and from the very beginning, we have a family, and from the very beginning, we were given flexibility to make them both work. I think that's important, and it's not a difficult thing to accommodate. But I think sometimes it still is challenging. I think that just talking with people, we've talked a lot about communication, and I think that will continue to be the theme through our conversation, but just trying to understand where people are coming from. The dietary thing actually is not that hard to accommodate, and it's very much appreciated. And in the situation with our site crews in particular at Wright Construction, it's helped us grow and retain, hire and retain people of that same community due to very simple things like, having a different area on the barbecue for grilling different meats, for example. So I think that, these things do work, but I think there is still resistance to them, unfortunately. And it's not a clear answer. So.
Okay. Ashley, would you like to comment on the benefit of investing in those inclusive policies?
Well, I think it's twofold. One, like Leslie has obviously seen just in her company itself, it stretches out to other diverse groups, and people talk and they know that you're a very conscious employer that takes diversity seriously and they want to work for you. I think on the side of, flexibility and, adapting to diversity, I've always seen it like a success story because it's a two-way street. And when you understand and appreciate people, they give back so much more because they feel wanted, they feel included, and that's your long-term retention strategy. I mean, everyone wants to feel that they belong and they're accepted for who they are, whether it's just the person you are or your culture or your preferences. And no greater success than working for an employer that wants to communicate that and be part of making you feel accepted. So I think when we're looking to continue to hire and grow our teams, I mean, there's nothing better than to grow a diverse team that wants to work for you and they want all their family and friends to work for you because you, in their mind, are an employer of choice.
Okay, Clay, anything further?
I'll echo a lot of that, but I'll maybe take it a step further. We do offer a flexible work environment in PCL I want to say almost to the operations or office staff. We have the ability to work remote. We have the ability to, if we need to look after a sick kid or attend a dentist appointment or whatever that might be, we have the ability to catch up and make that work. And it is a trade-off. It's a give and take, and, understanding the benefits of that from an employee's perspective, employer's perspective is incredibly important. But then we also have our workforce that we ask to work long hours away from home all across the province. I mean, we're based out of Saskatoon, but we have projects in northern Saskatchewan, Lloydminster, Prince Albert, Yorkton. We're spread geographically, and a flexible work environment for those individuals is really hard to accommodate when you're expected to be on site Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, working weekends when things get tough. So understanding, the challenges that puts on our, workforce and their own family situations and what that looks like and how we can help there is incredibly important to, not only understand, but be willing to work with that individual or those employees. So that we can really ask, the people that we probably ask the most of to do what they need to do on a daily basis.
Great. So we've talked a lot about culture and positive culture and what we can do from a policy perspective. And Sean, I'm going to modify your question here a little bit, but hopefully still get across intent. So in the attempt to put in good, effective, forward-thinking policies, you'll probably sometimes have elements of your company that try to reject that or maybe push back. How do you go and address some of those toxic elements that may or may not be present in your workplace culture? And I'll start with you, Leslie.
Go, Leslie.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I think and I'm not going to get the saying right, but one rotten egg can spoil the batch. That's not the saying, but you put me on the spot. So I think it is important. I think there's the obvious toxic profile, and I think that is easier to deal with, I think, and needs to be dealt with in a swift fashion. And I think a lot of companies are good with the obvious ones. I think there are some more subtle ones that are maybe more nuanced and more difficult to deal with. And I don't have any good answers, but I think that having a leadership group that is aware and can develop a strategy on these issues is the first step. I think that, in the 20 years that I've been in construction, a lot of, I'll say toxic behaviors, because that was the word of the question, have evolved and have changed. It doesn't mean that every single person is not exhibiting some of those behaviors, but it's grown and changed a lot. And I think it will continue to grow and change. Those behaviors and some of those attitudes aren't in style anymore. and that's a good thing. And I think the more diverse groups we get and the more perspectives we get, they'll just grow more and more out of style. So, yeah, an extreme toxic person, it's an HR issue and it needs to be dealt with. You can't wait. I don't think you can underestimate the impact of that on your team. But I think there's some more subtle things that are moving and changing. And if you're aligned at the top of your leadership group, they will shape themselves in a more positive fashion.
Excellent. Clay, anything to add there?
Yeah, well, at PCL, just from a toxic employee standpoint, obviously through our recruiting efforts and the procedure and process that we go through our hiring, as well as just how we onboard our employees, we encourage, we build a lot of individuals, from the beginning of their careers and up. So we hire a lot of students, and those students become full-time employees. And so, educating and creating that culture within that individual from a good hiring practice to begin with will address a lot of that. That's not to say that we don't have our challenges. And in the event that we do, obviously, like to Leslie's point, is that, it becomes an HR issue. We have avenues and very good processes for reporting to management. Management understands their management leadership. Our supervisors they understand their responsibility when someone brings that to their attention, as well as that we do also have a ethical complaint hotline, which is anonymous, and ultimately then goes to a ethical conduct compliance review committee that is held outside of our district, so that there's no biases or influence from that standpoint, that when an investigation is created or identified, that the appropriate people are handling that, and that it is managed appropriately to respond accordingly. So those situations are handled very delicately and with the care and due diligence that they require in order to understand what the actual issue is and how best to move it forward.
Okay, Ashley, would you like to add to that?
I think they covered it. I think when it comes to toxic behaviors in the workplace, both Clay and Leslie touched on this. You definitely have very glaring, obvious toxic situations that are a lot more a lot more immediate concern and need to be addressed with. And a lot of times, if it does come into any type of harassment, violence, ethical complaints, that's a very serious situation that you're dealing with. And that is dealt with on a much a very procedural basis. And I think each company has their own way of handling that. I think the tough ones are like the small toxicity that, slowly evolves over time in someone. And the one thing I have found, and I think everyone would be very similar, is that, the minute there's something brewing, I guess, you got to get on it. And so often I find just a very honest conversation with the right people. A lot of times that toxic behavior is stemming from something so small that can be changed, or something that they're just almost rebelling to. And it just isn't, it's not necessary. But I think we are in a very sensitive world, and I think we need to, take that into consideration and make sure that you can have one team member throwing off the culture of the rest of your team, or like Leslie said, you will definitely have a problem very quickly, and you'll have a team that's turning very toxic. Gonna think on that a little more though, and I don't know. Maybe John has some good answers. He's good at that.
I'd like to build on what Ashley was saying, because the reality is that there are so many external influences on people right now. When you think of all the things that are going on in the world, whether we're talking about wars that are currently happening in other countries, the economic influence, our finances, kids, teachers being on strike, there's so many things that are affecting our employees right now that, maybe they've always been there. Maybe now I'm just old enough to realize that they're there, that they're, what the potential driver of that toxic environment or that toxic individual, and you don't know what that person has going on at home. So, having that conversation with your employees, understanding what's impacting them and what's driving that behavior, because you know what, maybe they're just being an asshole because they got a whole pile of shit going on at home that they just don't know how to handle, and they're bringing it to work. And you know, what resources can you give that employee so that they can manage their family or home life or, you know, personal life, so that they can show up with the right headspace and that right intention, you know, on the job site and in the trailer, you know, when they're trying to do their work, and so that they're not distracted, and that they're, you know, not impacting that culture and that environment, you know, through the rest of the crew. It is really tough.
Do you think we've achieved, and I'll throw this out to anybody on the panel, do you think we've achieved in this industry a place where we've moved on from the attitude of leave it at home, or that's your problem at 5 o'clock? Or is that still prevalent when it comes to those, you know, things societally or at home that are bothering you and you're bringing to the workplace?
I feel that there has been a lot of gains made in that. I mean, just the ability to, is it perfect? No, but I think about, you know, even 15 years ago, you know, it wasn't, there was a clear line between work and home. And I don't feel that that line is there now. People are openly encouraged to talk about other aspects of their life. And I think as we, you know, move towards a better place with mental health, and mental health is just talked about so much more frequently and openly. And there's so many more resources to educate our teams on mental health, to encourage open dialogue, which I think helps, you know, get rid of that line between the two. We're people, you know, working and wanting to enjoy our jobs, to, you know, give ourselves a great home life. And, you know, work-life balance is a buzz term that, you know, has been going around for years. I don't believe that there's an ideal work-life balance. It all just kind of meshes together, and we're human, and we got to talk about that. So I think from my perspective, there's been great strides in that, and that we can continue to not compartmentalize, I think, because I think we've learned that that's not healthy.
I think we'd be naive to think that we could even say that in today's day and age, that leave your work life at home, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, you know, you're on the clock and you shouldn't be distracted. Yet everyone carries one of these around in their pocket everywhere they go. And, you know, whether that's pick up eggs, pick up groceries, you know, pick the kids up at, you know, can you pick the kids up at 3 o'clock, or something's happened, mom's sick, right? Like, how you manage that, or how you manage, like, it is in everybody's daily, you know, front of mind. And, you know, trying to balance that and, you know, encourage people to stay focused, and educate people on what that looks like. And, you know, yes, we want you to be, you know, when you're on the job site, focused on your task and your actions and the work that you're doing, and, you know, find time to manage the personal, you know, within your breaks or within the opportunities in the day that you have to do that, because it's there, it's present. And as an employer, it's how, you know, we find a way to manage that without banning cell phones, because I think that would be a mutiny.
Yeah, I think it probably goes to your early point too, Clay, of there is probably, you know, disparity between an office and environment and a site environment again. I mean, you know, there is different requirements on our sites, unfortunately, that probably, you know, makes that a little more difficult, or gives different challenges, maybe not more or less difficult. But there is a clear difference from being able to go pick up the eggs and the kids at 3 in our roles versus, you know, working a shift out of town or something like that. So I do think we have to be mindful that there is, you know, different, very different challenges between those situations.
It's a potential, you know, next question in regards to tech, but we also ask everybody to have one. Online orientation, you know, your PSI, your, you know, tailgates, the drawings, your technical information in order to do your work is contained within an electronic device. So it's again, super delicate balance as to how you can bring those two worlds together. Yeah.
Anyone like to add anything else?
I think the only thing I would add to it is I see a huge shift in leadership. I think, the mentality of leave your life at home and this is work is also a very old school leadership style of, it's just not the leadership you see today. You see compassion for employees. You see the caring that, employers, and I'm not saying it wasn't like this before, but employers genuinely care about their employees at work and outside of work. And I think cell phones are not, when issues happen the night before work and you can't get it off your brain and you come to work the next day with that on your mind, we as employers and leaders have the due diligence to understand how to balance that, because both of you guys touched on the fact that there is a safety concern when your mind's not on the task at hand. There's definitely safety concerns there, but I also am very sympathetic to people that there's struggles. And like Clay said, I don't know if it's social media and technologies, and just the world we've been in lately, but there's just endless struggles for humankind, whether it's financial, whether it's, family and health concerns, whether it's just, there's a million things. And so I think as an employer, try our best to balance, it's a balancing act, and there's just no perfect way to deal with it. But I think showing compassion and showing an understanding goes a long way, and it helps an employee maybe better departmentalize and understand what they need to bring to the table at work, and that you still have their back and you're still there for them to make sure they're okay at home, right?
Yeah, very much so. We've seen a lot of trends over the past few years, 24/7 availability of technology. Something recent to the last few years is Gen Z entering the workforce in greater numbers. And how do you find, as those trends take place and new generations come in who may have different emphasis on soft skills, or they've learned soft skills throughout their entire education and career, how's that affecting how you lead? I'll just throw that out there.
I have one. Sorry, I have one, and I've got three. Well, I've got two that aren't quite there yet, but I've got one, and as a parent, I've really tried my damnedest to make sure that he's social and can talk to people, because I feel like that's a skill that is going to be a huge benefit to him in his life moving forward, because there's also a whole generation that grew up in COVID that, lost 2+ years of the ability to socialize beyond text message and Snapchat. You go into a lunchroom trailer now, and we've been having this conversation, and you see it on the work site, is you go in a lunchroom trailer and people are not, talking about their weekend or what they did last night, or they're not socializing. They're on their phone watching TikTok and YouTube and, like the social media to keep themselves entertained, as opposed to building relationships with their crew members. And then that translates out onto site. They work independently. They work alone. They don't talk to each other. They're not, communicating. I mean, they do, but we almost have to force it to happen. So, and I by no means do I have a solution for it, but something that we're looking at for our own right within our own business, and how we influence that on our project sites, is that how do we create a social environment that allows people to communicate the way they're comfortable communicating, to build relationships with their coworkers, so that then you create that culture of looking out for each other and supporting each other and building with each other, so that we can do our work safely and, productively and in the best possible way. So, is it social events? Do we, create opportunities outside of, the job site to give these people and our workforce an opportunity to understand who they are and to care about their fellow worker? Because I don't see it happening as naturally as it once did.
Anyone else? I think, I don't. My kids are 16 and 20, so pretty soon I'm not going to have a direct touch point to the youth as well. I think that intentional conversations on give and take are important. I mean, we touched on it earlier when we were talking about allowing flexibility in the workplace to accommodate families or other events happening outside in your life outside of work. And I think the same the same principle applies to youth. I mean, if aside from the point on communication, which I think they do communicate differently, and Clay, those are good points. But I think just in the give and take on work value and culture, whether that's hours worked versus efficiencies and tools at their disposal to gain efficiencies, to different work arrangements. Since COVID, we've talked a lot about working from home and alternate work arrangements. I think their point of interest and inspiration is different than ours, and we need to work to find that. And really clearly define what value we're looking for and what balance they're looking for. And it's not easy. And I think that even when it's within the smaller group that I have, they want different things. It's not a one solution fits all by any means. But I remember my grandparents saying the same thing about my generation, the youth today. So, I don't know if every generation says that. I think that's part of it, but it also is very different. And I agree with Clay, the cell phone and, the different way that we communicate because of our phones is a new factor, I think, that's come in the last 15 years. So
I think that's to Leslie's, to build on that, is that, the workforce is coming with a different skill set. And, to the question itself is how, guidance on building soft skills. I think it's a lot with everything that we do is that we're identifying where the gaps are in our employees' abilities. At PCL, we've literally just rolled out a whole suite of PCL Learn courses that's around the behavioral aspect. It's, effective face-to-face communication. It's how to give a presentation, how to deal with conflict and conflict resolution. So, you're going to tailor your training and the development of your employees to the skill sets that they need improvement on. And if it is the soft skills, then that's where you focus it. They're super tech. There's, they can, do things with computers that, we've probably, that would have been a huge barrier for me.
Yes.
So I'm not training tech. I'm not training computers. I'm now training behavioral soft skills. So it's just a different focus on, where you need to put your energy on the training and development.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
I think, just kind of in line with what they said, I think business in general, you're always evolving and pivoting and going with new trends, whether it's, your team or safety, or it could be the economy, you're always trying to change and you're always having to chase where things are headed. And I think the team is just one of them. And like Clay said, we just have to provide the training. It's just a shift in training. And I think, the biggest thing is communicating with your team and making sure that when you're putting on like team building events and stuff, you're going to get the participation because it meets the requirements of what people would actually participate in. There's nothing worse than thinking you're really doing it in a team building event and trying to, increase communication, and you have 10 show up and it's, your 40 to 50-year-olds and not the generation that you were really trying to focus that socializing on. And I think we see it even just in the association itself. Networking events have changed drastically over the last even 5 years to 10 years ago of people no longer stay past 6 and they're quick in, quick out. And we just have to adapt to how we keep building relationships, whether it's our team or externally as leaders with other peers in our industry. And it's just a pivoting table, really.
So I'll throw this question out to everyone on the panel. As an association and an organization that provides training, how should we be adjusting our offerings to suit your needs as an employer? In some of those realms of those challenging elements of culture, of communication, of soft skills.
That's tough.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because I mean, while still tying that to the safety focus, like, I mean, are you looking, I'm going to ask, I'm answering your question with a question. Do you need to shift the training that's offered through the association? Because I know we leverage the association for our Scott training, fall protection. There's very specific training that, these individuals still need to go work safely, or at least that baseline that then we can then develop beyond that they need, to go work safely on our sites, which is always going to be required. Without a cultural shift in what the offering for the safety association may be, there might be, the need to have a program that creates an environment or educates people on the importance of being willing to speak up and not make do with what they see or what they're getting, being vocal with their employer to say, hey, there's a better way, or, providing that education to that workforce that it's okay to say no when they don't feel comfortable doing the work, or that it's okay to go ahead and ask for more help, or ask the general contractor to move some stuff out of their way, as opposed to, sticking a ladder over top of a bunch of material and reaching into a ceiling space, right? It's something that we're doing here, is that really trying to empower the workforce to not just accept the environment that they're working in and expect a clean site with, the right tools and the right resources to do their job. But I don't know if it's a Saskatchewan thing, is that people very much just, well, I made do with what I had to get the job done. It's a very Saskatchewan way, is that we make do with what we have to get the job done. And if there was a training or a behavioral course that SCSA offered that encouraged people to communicate and talk to their supervisor and talk to the people around them to create an environment that's safer for them to work in, with the expectations and the requirements they need to do their job without just making do, I would highly encourage a lot of people to go attend that, because I think more people need to speak up as opposed to just making it work on the site just to get the job done.
Yeah, and I'll respond to your part about us being an association and being a listening organization. We're very intentional about that. So when people see things like an annual survey come out or a net promoter score survey come out after they've completed training or an audit, that really helps us a lot. And what we've seen, I think, over the past couple of years is we've seen much more emphasis on companies and our members wanting to see more convenience in training and 24/7 offerings. We see a lot more people taking, say, online offerings on evenings and weekends than we ever did before. And that's speaking to the point of, we may have a short window of opportunity to communicate with people, and we kind of have to maximize the impact of that little time we sometimes have. So we definitely see that on this end. Content-wise, I think we've pivoted to a little more emphasis on supervisory skills and some of these soft skills, but it's largely stayed the same. Does that seem like a useful approach, or does that reflect on what you've seen in the field?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the online training platforms have a lot of benefit. People can do them when they're comfortable. People can do them at the pace they wish to do them at, to absorb the material the best. So there's lots of benefits to online training. I think, to circle back to what we were talking before about the younger generation, though, this intention on soft skills. I mean, the online training works because that is what a platform that people are used to and are used to engaging with. But that human element, I think there's a large opportunity there for soft skills training to bridge the gap. And I very much agree with Clay. Like, we're implementing a new software at work right now. I'm like one of the few old people that need training on how to wear and click the button, on how to do the task. All of most of the younger kids, and now I'm sounding super old, that's not where they need the training. The training is in the philosophy of the task at hand, right? Or the communication pattern with the task at hand. So I think that does ring true, and I think we are bridging a couple different generations. So there are a variety of needs, which makes it tricky.
Okay, so we are just about out of time here. So I'll go around and ask you, starting with Ashley, for any final reflections you have on leadership or safety, or anything you'd like to say to our audience.
Oh boy. I think the biggest thing is just the commitment of our leaders in our industry and the up and coming leaders in our industry to keep pushing the boundaries for what we can do better and how we can evolve. And I don't think that's just simply on the diversity side of thing. I think that's one element that'll be a huge growth potential for our industry. But I think as a industry as a whole, there's a lot of areas that we need to, really focus on work on. And one that I think obviously they spoke to before us is, mental health and mental wellness. And I think it's very relevant in today's world, and we need to, as leaders, make sure that we're pushing that forward and doing the right things for our employees and for our industry. And I mean, I think we've kind of acknowledged the fact that it's tough to be a leader. And so I think, in a world that's always changing and, managing so many different generations that all have different requirements, the one thing you can do as a leader is just be authentic, be true to who you are, be compassionate, and just be a good leader for human beings. And I think you will just see that 10 times over in the team that's rising up above you or below you, because you're inspiring them. That we just need an industry of kind, caring tradespeople, and the other elements that we need to focus on will, that they'll come in waves of, diversity will increase, and the kind people that are in our industry will support the diversity, and the kind people in our industry will help us push for more women and more minorities and Indigenous in our industry. And they'll want to look out for each other, for safety, for mental well-being. And it just really starts with being true to who you are and being kind.
Right. Leslie.
I think that, the conversation has evolved a lot in the last couple of years, even in the last 10 years. And I think we are on the right track to change the way we approach some of all the issues we have talked about to attract that workforce. To me, that's where the rubber hits the road with what we've talked about. We need the ability to attract and integrate and retain a good workforce, and I think that includes a more diverse workforce. But I mean, I don't think it has to be complicated either. I mean, one of the examples that I always tell about, mentors that I've had, I think leadership needs to understand that it can be very simple. I mean, one of the leaders I had at one of my first jobs, he's a big sports guy. And, he would stand with all the other boys and men at the water cooler, and they'd talk about sports over the weekend and sports statistics. And I don't really follow sports. I mean, I had young kids, I had no time, and it really wasn't my thing. But, he realized that and came and intentionally connected with me in a different way. And that small gesture and that once a week conversation about finding out what I was interested in, connecting with me on that topic, those things mean a lot. So I think, we don't have to look too far and get too complicated to really make a difference. And, I think, keep it simple, and we will see more progress.
Great. Clay, we have about a minute left. Do you have a reflection?
Okay. Perfect. So our Department Health, Safety, and Environment Committee had a challenge for each other, and it was to write your HSE elevator pitch as to, like, in 30 or 50 words or less, what does it really mean? So I'm going to share mine. We're going to post them on LinkedIn, so you'll see my wonderful photo and my message, as well as the rest of our committees hitting our PCL LinkedIn. But it's zero incidents is possible. And for me, that means that everyone goes home safe the same way they showed up, which is no scratches, no cuts, like anything that would impact them, their families, or their loved ones. It takes good communication and a culture where we're always looking out for each other to make that happen. And, we have a slogan. I'll share it. The WCB, I'll put it in the chat, but it's ours is target zero, a metric or a mindset, not a metric. And I still believe that to a certain degree, people accept that this is a dangerous industry and yeah, I might cut my finger or I might get hurt today. If you show up with that kind of mindset, you're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to get hurt, or you're going to see somebody get hurt. So change your mindset that, you know what, it's not okay to get cut or scratched or hurt at work. You should go home safe with the same number of digits, with no incidents, and change that mindset that you show up today going, I'm not getting hurt today. I'm not going to cut my finger. I'm not going to get a scrape. And I'm not going to allow the person that I'm working with or anyone else on this site to put themselves in a position to do the same thing. So I'll leave that with people. It's something that I'm sharing and as a company, PCL, that we're sharing. And we're putting all the tools in place for people to work safely. The policies in place for people to work safely, but ultimately, that worker needs to change their mindset that they're going to come to work and they're not going to hurt themselves. And we are there 100% to support them from doing it. So maybe a little bit longer a minute, but that's what I got today. So thanks, Edward.
Thank you. And thanks, Ashley, Clay, and Leslie for joining us today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Great discussion, and I look forward to talking to you again. So Jean and Stephen, back to you.
Well, thanks for that, Ed, and a heartfelt thank you to all the speakers for opening up, letting us into your world and letting us know what works for you and communicating it in that way. But two big things I want to get out before anybody logs off is we're going to put a feedback form in the comments. So we would love if you could take a couple minutes and let us know your thoughts there. It just helps us make us better and hear what you have to say. And next, the link for tomorrow is a little different. So make sure you go back to your email. And there's a different link for day 2 to get here. And we have some really good stuff coming up for day 2 that Steve's going to tell you about in just 1 second. But just a quick wrap up of some of the courses I've seen today that have in here, being the training technician I am. That our first John, there's so many Johns. Our first John talked about due diligence, degree of control, the Westray, supervisor. We talk about that a lot in leadership for safety excellence. We also have a course on contractor, which he also was plugging into section 33, getting into prime contractor. And then the last one, we kind of delved into basic training techniques a little bit, talking about mental health and how to be a supervisor and communicate effectively, which is a lot more than just words. So we can use all these kind of tools to work together. And that's what makes the core program a success, and your building blocks to that ever elusive safety culture. So wrap it up. I'm going to send it back to Steve or John.
Thanks. Whatever my name is at this point. Jean has definitely touched on a lot of the topics that we wanted to talk about. But of course, being in the SCSA, we have a lot of resources that we want to offer to our members. So we want to make sure we remind everybody about them. Things like our safety culture survey, which is an excellent way to kind of let your employees tell you how they feel your safety culture is working at their job sites in the workplace. Being able to allow them to have an anonymous voice so they don't feel that if they have some critiques or some suggestions that might not be kind of in that box, they can speak them freely and they don't have to worry about any kind of reprisal or anything like that. And sometimes just having that resource can really bring up some topics maybe you might not have thought about. And it brings it from the worker level, which is a lot of our speakers said, we want to focus on the people that are actually on the ground doing the work. We want to make sure that we are giving them resources to better do their job and to feel more fulfilled and effective at it. We also have our SCSA analytics, which is an excellent source of information from the WCB. It allows everybody to look at their WCB information, things like surcharges or discounts that you're getting, injury rates, basically a spreadsheet of all the injuries, lost time or not, that have gone on in your business. And it is a free service that we offer to all our members. So again, another great resource. We also have the advisory services. I myself am an advisor here, and we have a great team both in Regina and Saskatoon that can answer any kind of questions, concerns. If there's any new legislation that's coming out, we love to keep our members informed and make sure that you guys get the most benefit from us. We are always here to help. I know Jean loves helping the people she trains. I love helping the members. Just stay current on any legislation or any changes coming to the industry. And as far as tomorrow's session, we are going to have an armchair discussion between Drew Wilby, Deputy Minister of the LRWS, and Colin Poular, the SCSA President. Threads of Life is going to give some construction safety testimonials. The industry panel with mechanical contractors, Saskatchewan Buildings Trades and Provincial Construction Association, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Lisa Bellinger, behavioral change expert with practical tools for mental strength and performance. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed this today. And Jean, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, you did great.
Perfect. All right. Well, you guys have yourselves a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.